Good evening. Welcome to the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District's September 26th regular session meeting. My name is Greg Dale, and I welcome you. Roll call.
Commissioner Doss?
Here.
Commissioner Coleman?
Here.
Board President Dale?
Here.
Commissioner Marks?
Here.
And Commissioner Andrews.
Oh. Todd, would you lead us in the pledge? Todd, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
In this portion of the meeting, we take public comment on items that are not on the agenda. Members of the public may comment to the board on items that are not on the agenda.
Well, I don't know. Maybe a few of them will cross over. I get started going over the agenda. I hope I don't on that. I could be corrected if I'm wrong. I have some concerns regarding the current status of your loan with Commissioner Greg Dale's coming on, Pacific Choice. I can't ever keep the names straight and all that. Anyway, my understanding is that's probably been delinquent maybe for 14 months without any negotiations being completed as far as the terms of that. But maybe I could be corrected if that has been taken care of. There was a public perception brought to me that interest rate might be as high as 8.5% on that loan. But if it's out of date, you guys need to follow through and find out where you're going, because if you're retroactively spending that kind of money and yet could get a loan for 4 or 5% out there, I think your fiduciary duty is to follow through and get that loan so you know where the money is and get your best rate. That's what I'm after on that one. I still have major angst with that loan and the quid pro quo that was involved in that, and that won't go away. So a lot of attention will be paid to that. And, of course, it is your duty to get the best rate you can and shop around rather than continuing a loan that doesn't seem to be being paid down. And I guess nobody can contest it's not being paid down. I don't see any current big cash cow out there to pay it down. So I'm going to request that you get clarification from your executive director as far as the status of that loan, and make sure that and if I'm incorrect, if the information I've been provided is incorrect, and you do have a good loan rate that follows through with your duty to procure that good loan rate without strings attached, I highly recommend that you move forward along those kind of lines. Thank you for my opportunity to speak on that topic today.
Thank you. Anyone would like to comment on items not on the agenda?
Hi, gentlemen. Ted Romo, Eureka, California. I'm curious to know, do you use the Robert's Rules of Orders as your procedures?
We use a modified form, but we don't follow the book.
You don't follow the book? But is it written down as part of your procedural methods?
No.
I would ask that maybe you consider that in your next, where you guys are going on your new procedurals for how this committee works. And look at it and get it in writing so you know where you are. Thank you.
Anyone comments on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Consent calendar is passed. We'll move on to communications and reports. Mr. Director.
Okay, I'll just go over a couple things. Yesterday, at the Small Cookhouse, there was a presentation on the Coastal Act Master Plan. And I asked a number of questions on that, and I sent an email out to the board kind of giving a summary of that. And there was a recent last year, the Coastal Commission, they reviewed a request to have Newport be included in that. And within the legislative analysis report, they specifically said that Humboldt Bay was eligible to have a master plan under the Coastal Act. That's essentially is the same thing as the city and county have, which would give us coastal development permitting authority. We don't have any current plans to do that. I just wanted to let you know that. Because we believe that everybody was under the impression that we couldn't do that. So that was included in the legislative process. And then basically we've been asked by the Norwegian consulate. This was initiated through the contacts that the Nordic aquaculture people gave to the Norwegian consulate, where there's business groups that are coming to their office on November 18th, and they want to meet with people from Humboldt County and the Harbor District to do that. And so we'll likely be sending a few people down to meet with the consulate's office and others because there are investment opportunities in Humboldt Bay, primarily associated with offshore wind, aquaculture, and some of the other items. Also, the Board of Supervisors, within the last month, the Board of Supervisors met. And I've been meeting with the county CAO's office and also the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District and the Smaller Community Service District about how do we get upgraded infrastructure on the Small Peninsula. And the Board of Supervisors voted to have the county consider forming a joint powers agreement with the different agencies that we could work together to do that. So I met with the CAO's office today and continuing discussions. I'll probably have an agenda item sometime in the next couple of months to begin to discuss that and get the direction from the board. We got the results from the Redwood Marine Terminal 2, the brownfield soil sampling, where they sampled 8 feet down below. And those sample results, they should be made public sometime in the next couple of days. But again, I just spoke with SHN today, and they said everything looks really much better than what we had anticipated. I'm not saying there isn't any contamination there, but they said nothing was anything above anything that would be acceptable in a residential property, which is amazing for a site like that. And then I got appointed to the CMAC board, and Richard used to be on that, and I'm taking Richard's seat, and so the first meeting will be this month on that.
And that's a port outfit, right, Larry?
What's that?
That's a port outfit for people who
Yeah.
don't.
What does CMAC stand for?
California
Maritime Alliance Navigation Conference.
Yes, it's basically the main organization for California that gets the Army Corps of Engineers to dredge and do other infrastructure in the bay. And so it's a good opportunity. I believe it's a good opportunity for us to continue to try to get as much assistance as we can from the Army Corps of Engineers. And then we're going to the offshore wind conference next week for a couple of days. Again, this is kind of associated with the request for proposals that we put out for the Redwood Marine Terminal 1 dock. And so that's this week. And then we continue to work on the Dog Ranch acquisition. I'm pretty far behind on that, I must say, but I have other priorities, but we continue to pursue that. Couple of trainings that we have, the Coast Guard and the Harbor District are doing another joint training with the helicopter and the fireboat on October 7th. And then Humboldt Bay Fire and the Harbor District are doing a series of training exercises on the fireboats on October 9th, 16th, and 24th. And then MSRC and the Department of Fish and Wildlife will be doing another oil spill deployment. This time they're going to be deploying a boom off of the area around Redwood Marine Terminal 1 for kind of oil spill containment. It's not the same as what they did over there. It's more of the traditional equipment that we have here in Humboldt Bay. But I just want to let you know these are some of the joint training and some of the training exercises that we're doing this upcoming month. And then I believe it was Tuesday, we had a meeting with the new San Francisco District Commander The Army Corps of Engineers and the civilian head, Commissioner Dale, and Commissioner Coleman were also there. I was trying to remember. I'm sorry. And so it was really kind of in response to this August 23rd letter that the Harbor District submitted for request for assistance. They put a couple of copies on the table over there, where essentially we outlined some issues that we had with the emergency shoaling and dredging and some other issues. And so we really worked towards improving communication, which is the overarching goal. We talked about how do we get consistent funding for the entrance channel and the inner channel. Because as we know, the inner channel, especially right here living out of the marina, is extremely shallow. And the big thing on that, they were really surprised because the Coast Guard representative was there, and that they had said that they had to move their boat because the federal channel is so low. And the Army Corps said that that's their highest priority that they have, is to make sure that the Coast Guard boat gets out. And so we want to make sure we remember that one, because that's their highest priority, is making sure the Coast Guard boat gets out. And so we asked them again to come and make passes on there so we can keep that channel open. Survey data, we reiterated, and they were committed to getting us survey data as rapidly as we could. And then as kind of a follow-up, I'm having just a staff working group of port owners and the bar pilots and other people to essentially try to work to get a 12-month course. And we have to follow up with the meeting that we just had with a letter to Lieutenant Colonel Cunningham, with some specific actions of how we think the Army Corps could slightly change their dredging strategy to keep the entrance open for more than the strategy than they've been following. And that's kind of my report. I'm going to turn it over to Chris briefly.
Okay, so first and foremost, the facility is a special thank you to our crew. We've got 6 very dedicated individuals who stand tall every day to take care of our facilities. And very grateful to be working with each one of them. Recently, we took Fire 1 out of the water, brought it down to Field Landing Boatyard for a periodic safety inspection. We service the hail pumps. We are doing the general scheduled maintenance on it. And then actually gave a wax job to the vessel. So we're very grateful to have that. It's going to be used to service the marine outfall line probably as early as next week. We talked about that in the last meeting. Here at the marina itself, we've been doing a number of dock walks. Well, I'm not part of dredging. They're preparing for dredging, which gives us a chance to have some vacant slips periodically. We're going to do some maintenance while we're in there. We're also installing a sewer meter out here. Our sewer meter costs are tied to our water costs, and obviously we're a large water user. So we're installing a sewer meter so the city of Eureka can measure our sewer usage and greatly reduce our costs. And this is a project that I inherited prior to me coming on board, but we're getting that done. That disclosure is another thing that I take credit for it. We're prepping for following winter. We're cleaning some gutters and drains and inlets around the place. And then we're reworking our land allocation of space in both our storage and work yards to create more available space for our working commercial fishermen here in the marina. As for the boatyard, we've had a series of wash water tests down there where we're trying to make sure that we have clean storm water coming out of our system. We put some new best management practices into place, as well as brought some new technologies in terms of the filtering we use, and we got clean tests, which is a huge plus for us. So we're now able to dump our storm water and our wash water in the boatyards in a much more proficient manner than we've been doing that. We're taking advantage of a opportunity with Rhode Coast Energy Authority to put LED lighting in our office, and we're also a candidate to get our shop redone. We're looking at that actually globally to reduce quite a bit of our costs in that regard. And the boatyard's been busy. The holiday launches are picking up. Everyone's preparing either for winter or crab season or otherwise, and that's been a very active yard recently. Finally, we're working with the boating and waterways. We have about 18 vessels down at Field Landing Boatyard we'd like to get rid of. Not all of those are pleasure vessels, but we do have a grant to begin removing the pleasure vessels, and we're getting very close to having our first boat demolished. At RMT1, we now have power restored to the red tank, an issue that's long behind us, and we're very grateful for our cooperation with our neighbors at Green Diamond and Danco. The fire system in the red tank was tested after this, and we had a drill. We were astonished, but also very excited to see we have absolutely no leaks between the tank at RMT2 in the red tank. So in the event of a fire system or a fire, we're fully compliant. We did that in cooperation with Peninsula Fire. And we're organizing our storage areas and removing a lot of excess debris that are around RMT1. We'll have that done in the next week. Finally, at the main marine terminal, we're getting really into recurring maintenance schedules out there. It's nice. Right now, we're not having a big change in operations, so we're just doing the recurring things that have to happen. We're examining opportunities there, as I shared the other sites, for LED lighting, occupancy sensors, and other ways to control energy costs. We have a lot of post-auction equipment in the big warehouse that was left over from our predecessors, the pulp mill. So we're selling some of that equipment to various users that can use it, generating a little bit of revenue there. We're being organized our warehouse. The idea with getting rid of this equipment is we want office space for rent. That's how I can keep my job. So. Then, on an unfortunate note, we had a new tenant move in, and they poured a major footing, 4 feet by 4 feet, 6-foot slab, 4 feet deep, and they broke our sewer lateral. There was so much compression in there, or they hit it with their backhoe. This is one of our main restrooms on the facility in our largest warehouse, and it took down 2 out of the 5 stalls that we have. So we're working to get those repairs completed, hopefully tomorrow, and we've already started working with the tenant and their vendor on our request for reimbursement.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Adam? Don? No. Brian?
Nothing to know.
Nothing? Awesome. Commissioner? Commissioner Don?
You bet. I think just more of just a few points to just bring up. And the dredging here just has not started yet, but we're expecting weather. I was talking to Larry earlier today, and weather's slowing that down a little bit, but still positive about getting that done. So still looking forward to that celebration. See that first bucket of mud comes out. And the Humboldt Bay Harbor Working Group had the local coastal plan as the subject in their last luncheon, which I was excited to see that. That is, from a management standpoint, I think that's a subject that we should have discussion with the public about more, and really look at the benefits of producing a master plan report and getting into more local management and not having the coastal commission so overbearing on what we do. So I think that's something that, whether it's long term or if we can work it through in the next couple of years, I think that'd be a big and be a cost saver for the community. And in the vein of cost saving, another couple subjects that are coming up. I know Greg and you and I are going to be meeting about budgeting, and we haven't discussed yet, but just a few things are coming to mind. And one is, field landing facility, looking at how to get some more income there and more efficiency. That's one facility we haven't really spent a ton of effort on talking about, but the other is looking at refinancing debt, which was mentioned earlier. I think that's a discussion we should be looking at as refinancing. The big one the district has just been saving interest rate and knocking that thing down. So those are just things on my mind about the district. Then on a personal note, my family and I just returned from a big draft horse show, and the whole group did really well. So that was a lot of fun. We represented Humboldt County.
A couple things. A few weeks ago, I attended a community advisory board meeting at the King Salmon power plant regarding the nuclear decommissioning, and found it very interesting as an understatement, and think that it would be something that the community advisory board was formed quite a while ago, and as far as I know, there's never been any harbor district or harbor safety committee representation on it. and there's not a really strong collaborative effort on emergency response plan. And just real shortly, without going too much into it, the power plant there is the first commissioned nuclear power plant in the United States when it was decommissioned. The DOE is supposed to take charge of all the spent nuclear fuel, but the DOE's not doing anything. PG&E wants to do everything to wipe their hands of it. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission wants to wipe their hands of it. So now it's sitting in these very solid casts, buried in Field Landing. Unfortunately, the casts are rated, I didn't get a straight number, but it's anywhere from 40 to 60 years is the lifespan of these casts. The material is radioactive for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, and so I don't know if there's a plan yet for what to do after, if there's a plan and who's going to pay for that, or us in some way, I'm sure, but who's going to pay for those tasks to be updated, and what the plan is if we have a seismic event that drops those in the bay, or if we continue to have erosion. And so I found it disturbing, but picking them up and moving them along 299 or 36 to some other place is equally, if not more, disturbing. So I just think it's something that the district and the public should be aware of, because I was surprised that this meeting was even happening. I just found out it now. And I will continue to look into it both as a district representative and as a tribal representative, because there's also no tribal representation on the community advisory board, which I also found. And then Larry and I have continued meeting with the union representation, and that seems to be going towards a conclusion for renegotiating a contract with them. And then Larry talked about the meeting with the Army Corps, and that seemed to go pretty well in opening communications. I hope that communications evolve into some action. I think there's a lot of that they can do to help with our situation with continuing dredging and continuing keeping the port open and with the jetties. And one final thing I want to announce on November 30th, the Blue Lake Rancheria, where I work in collaboration with Redwood Coast Energy Authority and the City of Blue Lake, will be having an electric vehicle expo during the day, and in the evening after dark, the inaugural lighted electric vehicle parade. Now there'll be 3 holiday parades in Humboldt County. There'll be the tractor parade, the truckers parade, and the electric vehicle parade. So anyone with an electric vehicle, the registration is free to come participate. Brad Humboldt is going to be there to help people decorate their cars, and it should be a lot of fun.
Commissioner Marks. Go Giants, right?
Go Giants, yeah. Anybody knows there was a ship yet? So that was a good thing. That's what we want. We'd like to see more of that in Humboldt Bay, and we'd like to see it 12 months ago. So I attended the wind energy workshop yesterday, and of course they're talking about putting some platforms out there for approximately 15 windmills out about 25 miles, and it seemed like everybody was positive. We talked yesterday, and fishermen seemed like they were willing to listen, and how they want to put input, of course, so it's a good thing. As long as the community is all involved and everybody agrees on what's good for the community, and that'll be the important thing. And with that,
Well, a lot going on the Eel River. Falls Chinook are moving in. Unfortunately, the river is braided this year, very shallow, high risk of stranding for Falls Chinook. So working on something called Lower Eel River Salmon Parkway that would include habitat restoration down there. Have 102 water temperature gauges out in Eel River. And it might rain, and they might all float away. So I've got a little bit of anxiety in terms of retrieving water temperature gauges, but it helps us take the pulse of the eel, figure out where the cold water spots are, where the salmon are thriving, and where those places are where we need to do a little more to be in harmony with nature. and held some events in the Middle Eel between Dyerville and Dos Rios. It's 80 miles of like wild and scenic river, 2 places the river crosses, and often thought to be lawless and unorganizable, and I wish to take issue with that. I think there's a lot of people of conscience in that neighborhood, and that we can both make a healthier landscape through water conservation and pollution prevention, and also getting back to fire on the landscape, which will help flows and also prevent catastrophic fire and create jobs for generations. So it's time to get on it. And I was in front of the Harbor Working Group and got my warmest reception ever. It's been just about a month. But what I was talking about is the fact that over on the sideboard here, if you guys want to see, eelgrass is in the same footprint as 1870. No problem with eelgrass in Humboldt Bay. Big problem in other bays in California because of pollution and ecosystem function. Our bay is functional, so we have eelgrass, and we're the only bay where it's going to increase in its footprint in climate change according to models. So therefore, we need flexibility where we can do basically disturb 3% maybe in the whole bay of eelgrass, and within 3 years it'll grow back. And then we can conduct the business of the people, maintain the harbors, and also cope with climate change. So our constraint with dealing with king salmon, for instance, we couldn't dredge the channel there and run down sediment to restore the salt marsh at White Slough for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service because we were going to harm eelgrass. So we've come to an impasse, and it isn't necessarily logical. And so this will continue to be a thread for me. And then there's the longfin smelt. And the longfin smelt, Sporhynchus thalichthys, is endangered everywhere else and going extinct from pesticides in San Francisco Bay. But we have a functional ecosystem, and also it's reciprocal with the Eel River estuary, where it's in recovery from the '64 flood, which is what took down the longfin smelt. They're in the bay, they're in the Eel River estuary. Their population needs to be considered jointly between those two entities, the water bodies, as a meta-population. I don't think they're in trouble. But the California Endangered Species Act says they're going away everywhere else, so we can't touch the bay because we might kill the longfin smelt, even if there's a bunch of them. So more data. The district wants to work together with the agencies to collect these data and also to restore the habitat of this fish and to improve the habitat of Humboldt Bay overall. But in our current regulatory climate, we can't do anything. And so that isn't doing the people's business, and it isn't, doing nothing is not a success for anybody. So we'll be mulling this with other groups. When I brought this up at the Harbor Working Group, there was a positive response from agencies and government entities. And so in a couple of months, it's likely that we will shape a white paper so that we can get the validation of all the governments and also nonprofits so that we have consensus and an express trust with one another to move forward in the management of Humboldt Bay. And I'm like a chihuahua with a cuff. I'm not going to let this one go. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Patrick. I guess it's my turn. Speaking of water temperatures, I don't know if you guys realize, but Humboldt Bay is still 70 degrees. It's kind of crazy for this time of year. So we did meet with the Army Corps, and there was a number of people there. I mean, our own kind of czar, Humboldt Bay. Leroy was there, and Dave Snyder, Pete Jackson, the city of Eureka. It was actually it was a great meeting. Stu Townsley attended with the colonel. Was very forthright. Was very understanding. I thought it was one of the better meetings we'd ever had with the Corps. So I was pleasantly surprised and optimistic. There's still a few things that we have that are problems. Dredge capacity on the West Coast is absolutely an issue. I think budget scoring rules affect us. Certainly some flexibility to move money from project to project seem to be on their mindset. The problem with that is we haven't spent all the money that we've had allocated to us in the last 3 years. So, and that comes right down to dredge capacity. You don't have enough dredge capacity. So there's going to be some work in that realm. Hopefully, my understanding, Leroy, correct me if I'm wrong, the private dredge companies say there is capacity, the Corps says there isn't capacity.
Yeah, that's
And
correct.
it may be more of a contracting language issue than it is dredge capacity. We would like to see the old days where the Yaquina or a private dredge was in the bay right now, doing the inner reach. So I think that's all in the works. We'll see how it goes. So that, I don't have anything else. So we'll move on. Unfinished business, we don't have any unfinished business. We finished all our business already? We're moving on to item 7A, update regarding the Humboldt Bay Mariculture pre-permitting project, intertidal components. Adam?
So as I have said before, is that I have property on the bay and kind of repeat myself on this. You guys ready here?
Okay.
Are you growing any oysters right now, though?
I don't know.
Read that, Adam?
No, I can't. I'm not going to change anything. I thought he might do that.
Sort by date.
Mindy, help him.
Sort by date, it'll come right up at the top. There it is. There we go.
That's dredging. Well, that was easy.
Yeah, right where we need.
Why wouldn't you find that?
Thank you, Mindy.
Congrats.
Yeah, I'm going to provide an update on the Humboldt Bay Mariculture pre-permitting project. I know a lot of people here are familiar with this, but I'm going to give a quick background sort of from the beginning. The goal of the project is to expand commercial mariculture activities in Humboldt Bay, create jobs, benefit the local economy, and increase local sustainable seafood production. To do this, quite a number of years ago, it determined that one of the factors, or maybe the main factor, limiting expansion of commercial mariculture was the regulatory process, and that it was just too cumbersome, expensive, uncertain for shellfish growers to get through that process. And so the Harbor District, working with the County Headwaters Fund, provided some funding to do this, to provide some benefit to farmers by sort of making an easier way to get through the regulatory process. So this slide is showing what I'll call the traditional regulatory process, whereby individual shellfish growers need to get permits, go through CEQA, NEPA, a bunch of different regulations, but I guess the main permits are from the Coastal Commission, the Corps, the Water Board, and the Harbor District. And so to make that process easier, the idea is to insert the Harbor District into that process, whereby the Harbor District gets all those regulatory approvals for specific sites in Humboldt Bay, and then leases those pre-permitted sites to private shellfish growers. So the private shellfish growers can come to the Harbor District, establish a lease, and have an already permitted site. A number of years ago, we chose to break that project into an intertidal and subtidal component. The intertidal component is mostly in Arcata Bay, although it does potentially extend onto Indian Island some. And then the subtidal component is entirely in the Samoa Peninsula. The reason we decided to separate it is because the intertidal part of the project had a number of hurdles that were really slowing down the process, and really still are, that the subtidal part was not subject to. Specifically, the intertidal part has more regulatory challenges. There's more sensitive habitats, eelgrass, Pat was mentioning. We also have a challenge in there, which I'll talk about a little more later in the presentation, but with private landowners owning property, so there's a challenge there where we need to work with private landowners. We don't have those same challenges in the subtitle part, so we realized that by breaking the project apart, we could move the subtitle part forward faster. One way to put it, I guess, would be like the intertitle part was sort of an anchor on the whole thing, so there's no reason not to move the subtitle part forward. The agenda has an intertitle presentation and a subtitle. I probably should have said, but I'm kind of going through them both all at once now, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about the intertitle part. So the intertitle part, what we're working on is permitting, again, areas in Arcata Bay for off-bottom culture of Kumamoto and Pacific oysters to full market size, grow out to market size. The project area has been fluctuating, but maybe around 200 acres. And again, one of the challenges we're facing in this area is that a lot of those lands are privately owned, requiring agreements with the private landowners. But here's where we're at with that process. We have a project design. We've done the scoping part of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. We've issued a notice of preparation and received comments on that. I realized because so much time has passed, there's some uncertainty regarding the agreements that have been reached with some of the landowners out there. So I'm in the process of reaching back out to the landowners in Arcata Bay to make sure we have firm agreements about permitting for culture on the property and that we're moving together as partners. I plan to finish that process of reaching out to landowners next month. And then after that, I'll finalize the maps. There's potential that the footprint will shrink if some of the landowners are not participating and so forth. So my plan is by the end of this year to finalize the maps based upon that outreach and finish the draft EIR, which is largely developed already, and then distribute it in early 2020. And the goal to finish that entire process in 2020, but coming back to the point, which I think at this point we just need to be explicit about, there's major challenges with perceived or real threats to impact seagrass and other species. There's sort of ongoing threat of litigation over the CEQA documents. There's this challenge with the landowners. We need to get agreement with the landowners to lease their property or permit it. So there's a lot of challenges, but it's a big focus of ours right now, and that's our goal, is to go through this in 2020. It's a big push right now. So. And that's really, I just wanted to give an update like that, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Commissioner Goss.
How are we handling the permitting? Are we looking at a blanket permitting on intertitle, whether it's private or publicly owned, or are we only going? Are we cutting out the private that doesn't want to participate?
Yeah, we would cut out the private that doesn't want to participate. So a good portion, as it turns out, of Arcata Bay is privately owned. Ownership of the bay and entitlement law and stuff is very nuanced, and I'm not going to go into all those nuances right now. There's been a lot of discussions with the board and staff about this, but sort of in a nutshell, our understanding is that for seltzer's culture to occur on privately owned land in Humboldt Bay, there needs to be a lease from that private. And so for us to execute this project, we need to, there may be other potential variations of this, but what we're pursuing is leases with those landowners. Once we can lease it with them, and we have an agreement with them, we don't need the lease first, but once we have an agreement with them, we can do the permitting, attempt to do the permitting, lease it from them, and then sublease it to private shellfish stores. There are some parts of the bay where we would pursue this that are owned by the city of Eureka, which is definitely a willing partner, and their city council has spoken to that. There's some parts of the bay the part that's owned by Manila Community Service District, which is publicly owned, and then there are parts of the bay that just aren't owned by anyone, and hence just sort of fall within our tidelands. And so we don't need any agreements with there. But I'd say 90% of the area that we've been looking at for the intertidal pre-permitting project is privately owned.
Okay.
But no, I mean, at least my recommendation is we would not even attempt to do this without a landowner that in my mind is sort of eagerly participating. We wouldn't want to like drag them through and get to the end and permit this on the property unless they're fully on board.
Okay.
And so I'm working to make sure that those agreements are in place. And it could reduce the size.
What's the length of time on this permitting? What's the?
So my goal, which, I mean, it's easy to write these kinds of calendars on paper.
Right.
Venn diagrams?
We all have schedules, right? In a practical world, I'm being, honest as I can. So, but, is that by the end of October, I've already started to reach out to these landowners, I'll have agreements or not.
Okay.
If I don't, we're gonna move forward with the areas we have agreements. Where we have agreements, that finalizes our footprint. We can finish the draft EIR. Most of it's already drafted, but the footprint's really important. The acreage effects, all the analysis, filters, through all the different parts of the document. Release the draft EIR in 2020. That gets 45-day circulation. And then, I mean, again, on paper, there's no reason we can't respond to the comments, finalize the EIR, submit the permit applications, and be done by the end of 2020.
Right. So,
but again, we're under implicit threat of litigation. Right? There's a lot of variables here. So
right.
We've altered the project so it largely is fully grass. And so we've done a lot to try to reduce the risk on this, but there's still risk.
So time-wise though, the permits that we're as a district going after, how long will those permits, once they're in place, last?
Oh, each permit is different.
Okay.
Yeah, so some of them could be 10 years, some are a couple years.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, there's 4 different permits, it's variable. With that type of permit, assuming we're doing everything that we agreed to do, I can't drag, but they should be fairly easy to read.
Okay.
But is that the case? Yeah. We've been through a lot of this oyster farming permitting, so that's why I know. So yeah, they should be easy to read. Similar to our permits we issued, most are just for 1 year.
Yeah.
But we expect a lot of the projects to take longer, and as long as the permittee doing what they're supposed to do, we review them pretty well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the private landowners that choose to not participate, they are going to be at a pretty big disadvantage should they change their mind and want to permit later down the road. Then
Well, I mean, I presume so. They'd have to go through the permitting process
themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
And then any mitigation that's happened has been used up. So it's
Perhaps,
to their benefit to at least go through the process and then maybe choose to not lease.
Well, I would hate that. Well, my sort of angle on this is to move this project forward with landowners. I'll just use the word eager, that eager to participate, right? Because I don't see value in spending your staff's time, agency's time, permitting sites that aren't ultimately going to be leased.
Right.
It's just what it is. We want to move forward sites that we're going to get to the finish line and actually have fun.
Thanks.
That's my recommendation. I mean, this is a discussion. You guys
Well,
move
yeah,
forward.
Commissioner Coleman?
No, just thank you for the report.
Commissioner Marks?
And we have an action item right behind this, so.
You do on the subtitle part, this is one agenda item that we put as
This is just
an
the information.
Right.
You have any comments on this item? Mr. Commissioner Higgins wants to comment.
This number's among my greatest frustrations in service to the community as Harbor District Commissioner. I believe the 10-foot spacing on oyster culture is non-destructive, that we have come light years from when we dredged the bay to collect oysters, and with the 10-foot spacing. I don't believe it shades eelgrass. I believe it adds productivity and macroalgae on the lakes where the oysters are cultured. That gives you more fish biomass. So you've got the oysters, you've got the eelgrass, you've got fully functional eelgrass beds, and you've got cleansing action of the oysters, which are known now to eat mass wasting disease of eelgrass. So we have a war going on over this. It's largely promulgated by folks from outside. It's largely based on arguments of like eelgrass is going away everywhere else, so don't touch a stick. It's not working, and this is a symptom of it. And Adam, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No, please do.
well, it's kind of trivia stuff. What's the original number of acres we thought we were going to lease for oysters? Subtitle.
Or intertitle, I mean.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been all over the board. At one
yeah, no,
point
but
it
I mean,
was
it's
over
like 6X.
500 acres.
We're down to 200 acres, and it used to be like 1,200 or, you know, at least 3 times what we're currently leasing. So we're backing down, and we're backing down, and we're backing down to the most acceptable. So I hope at some point we back down to the point where we can go forward, because this was pegged as an economic opportunity by an economic development committee I convened in 2008. I believe it's a harmony-based activity like the Indians. If you're in harmony with nature, there's no negative side effects. You get rich. You work against nature, like we used to dredge all the time for these things. That was a dead end. That wasn't going to lead to a productive bay. This is a harmony-based enterprise, and I believe it should be allowed to go forward in. I'll continue to operate on a positive presumption, but I have not been appreciating the arguments offered against it because I don't think they're fact-based. I think they're fear-based.
I will just make one more comment, and I think, Pat, you know, one of the things you're pointing out is there's a lot of disagreement around the science of the effect of oyster culture on the ecosystem, and I think clearly there's some benefits to the ecosystem. In my opinion, there's some impact, but there's a lot of, again, disagreement about the science. As I noted, we've had opposition, particularly from a group of hunters and conservation advocacy groups, and I just wanted to let you know too that I'm meeting again with that group in early October. They've asked for another meeting to try to pull up some math and roll up our sleeves and see if we can come to some kind of compromise. So I'm trying to be, I'm being optimistic about that.
Well, thank you for negotiating, because it's, you know, we have to kind of maintain civility and work with our neighbors on these questions when there's differences. But also, with the package, when you know, oyster leases were considered before, with each one goes adaptive management. So you can go out and take a cruise on the bay right now. You get up near the oyster beds, you're going to see time-lapse cameras that are taking pictures of whether or not the brant are using the oyster beds and the eelgrass within them. And so we're doing the science to take the pulse of the ecosystem, and if it indicates that there's no risk to the system, then we should be moving forward. So, sorry, Adam.
Thank you, Patrick. So at this point, I'll take it to the audience.
Ken Sawatsky, I appreciate the fact that you are moving forward to deliver your deliverables that were to be delivered to the headwaters. They'll be pleased to know that you're not done with that project yet. I know there was some major angst because the money was spent, and in the opinion of many people in the public and some of the headwaters commissioners or members there, that it hadn't been followed through with, delivered. I do have a question. Larry Odker recused himself from this one. And if there's anybody else who should be recusing themselves, I guess for the same reason, because they might have some kind of financial interest or potential future financial interest, I recommend that the people not participate in the process and also recuse themselves on this and the next topic. I applaud you for reaching out to, I guess it would be both the Hunters and the Audubon Society. Those were two people that I'm sure both groups had a concern with what's going on out there, and both groups should be equally engaged in your process if you want to have a buy-in without potential litigation. That's kind of what happened last time without that happening. So I applaud, you know, that we're going through the whole process here, and look forward to seeing some productive results come from that. I did wish to have a little more input as far as what many people perceived as the intent of the money that came from the headwaters. And it was to enable the small oyster growers who could not afford to go through this process, did not have the financial depth, such as owning 96% of the oyster business in the bay, which enabled them to financially do it. And they were to be the main beneficiaries of it, not the one who owns the 96% and could afford to do it. So I strongly suggest that when you go through this process, you take that public perception into account. And what I believe, if you go through the complete headwaters records, comments, and things that were done that in the process, you'll find that that is what was perceived to be the objective of this process, was to enable small oyster growers, like especially our local oyster growers, to either expand their footprint or to even out the playing field, rather than, unfortunately, it appears that the 96%er is one of the ones who's benefited from the subtitle component of this, and I'd hate to see that continue as far as monopolistic business practices. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat, for the supportive word for the oyster farmers. I'm Todd Van Herp, Humboldt Bay Oyster Company. Turnaround, and I've been farming out on the bay for 25 years. It started out as a summer job, going to school. You were in one of my classes, Greg. You sat in the back.
Before I was born, Todd.
Sat in the back. Anyway, I started my farm, Humboldt Bay Oyster Company, 17 years ago, on a glorious piece of mud out on the bay that I leased from you guys at the Harbor District. For 9 years before that, I worked for Ted Kuiper on that same piece of ground. Ted Kuiper got that piece of ground in 1978, and it's been in continual lease with the Harbor District since then. Recently, a land survey has been done, and it's been found that part of my farm along the edge of the channel lies on private property. That's going to create a problem for me. I've been one of the biggest advocates for this process, this program, since it started. I think I helped with the wording of the application to Headwaters. I went to Headwaters twice. I've been to meetings. I've advocated for this for a long time. So I got my opportunity because I was in the right place at the right time, and I wanted to be there and be supportive for other folks to get into it. From the outside, it's daunting. You can't take the time, the money, and the uncertainty to go through the permitting process if it's just going to fall on its face at the end. This was the golden opportunity for a lot of people who couldn't get in to get in. At this point, I'm not so supportive of the process. Ironically, one of its biggest cheerleaders is taking a hit on it right now. This is coming around, and my farm's at risk. That private property is not willing to work with me on that, and they are offering it to another entity, Hog Island Oyster Company, who is working on a grant or on a lease with that private property owner, and I run the risk of losing half of my footprint out on the mudflats. So I would hope that the district and my long-standing lease with the district it counts for something, that the district will stand up and stand up for me, stand up for itself, and protect and preserve that lease. You're reaching out to private landowners to work with them on the pre-permitting. Maybe you could afford the same opportunity to me. Maybe you could reach out to the private landowner and work a deal. I only have 2 acres that overlaps their private property. It's a 100-acre parcel. I just want to keep what I got. I just want to keep doing what I do, supporting my family, and doing what I love to do. So if you guys could be helpful in that respect, I would like it. I've had a meeting with Adam and Larry. State Lands Commission is a little ambiguous about the jurisdiction. So needling that out and discovering what the
State Lands Commission's standing is on that particular parcel would be it'd help clarify the situation. And whether it's a public trust easement, the district is the public trustee over that. There's typically over private property a public trust easement. It pretty much dictates what can be done. I'm not real sure. Although I've read that the district has leasing authority. I don't know on private property if that's the case. There's a lot I don't know. I'm still looking into it. But it's something that will is very important to me. I've spent 25 years in the industry, and I don't feel like going away. Thanks.
Sebastian, all right, with Aqua Rodeo Farms and Humboldt Bay Provisions. I'm really glad that this project is not catching dust on the shelf and that you guys are still working through it, because we really, people like Todd and myself are really excited about hopefully seeing this come to some kind of fruition, especially on this schedule. This looks like a really expedient schedule, I mean, considering where we've been so far. But I have the same thing. I was in the right place at the right time with my current lease, which is on paper a 10-acre lease, but I'm only actually active on about 3.5 acres of that lease. It's a sublease from North Bay Shellfish, which holds the lease through the city of Arcata. And without that opportunity made through a project like this for other individuals, I think we're really going to stifle what opportunities this local economy has, because there's as you know, there's a lot of empty storefronts. The college is down in enrollment currently. There's a lot of cash money that's not around anymore. A lot more money that is being done through that industry is getting funneled to Sacramento. Permits and fees. So whatever we can do locally to, see this project through and try to make it available to some diehard individuals that are willing to, actually put the work in and get dirty, I think it'll be a great thing. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to 7B, and that was informational. I stuck it out. I'm going to lead through this one, Adam. I'll bring I think Larry's going to stay out on this one too. I got a key.
Mine's in my desk.
You got a credit card, that would work on that card.
Say, go ahead. Yeah, you gotta take the gavel.
Okay, so as I previously discussed, we've split the project into an intertidal and a subtidal component because, as I said, we felt that intertidal was sort of an anchor on the subtidal part. We were right, so we have been successful in permitting 21 acres of subtidal area through the Maricultural Pre-Permitting Project. The 21 acres are permitted for culture of Kumamoto and Pacific oysters and Manila clams. Only as a nursery, they can't be grown out to market size in these areas. It's also permitted for seaweed culture, red algae. This is all in the Samoa Channel, as I indicated. We've executed 2 leases so far within this area for a total of 7 acres. There are some shellfish culture operations that have already started up. I'm currently finalizing the design. I've been working with HSU on a pilot project for farming red algae, sort of a seaweed pilot project for culture. We're almost done with what's called the culture description, all the details of it, where it would go, the methods and stuff. And then we'll be able to execute a lease probably within the next month or so. There's 14 acres still available for lease. The process for leasing these pre-permitted sites is that once a private shellfish grower or seaweed grower expresses interest, then district staff will work with them to develop what we call a culture description. This has to show the map, where it's going to be, obviously, the method, and really has to show that what they're proposing conforms with the permit we have. All the conditions of the permit we have get passed to the shellfish culture through the lease. They're attached to the lease, essentially. Once we develop that culture description, and also showing that it avoids impact sealgrass, then we can negotiate and execute the lease. So, 21 acres, subtitle culture, not a trivial amount of area that's permitted. Some success to this project. The other thing is it's a proof of concept, right? We've shown that we can do this. Getting the local commission to allow the district to hold permits and then issue leases under our permit for private shellfish stores was a challenge in of itself, and took a lot of negotiation with the Coastal Commission and the other agencies, the Army Corps and the Water Board, just to do that. And now that we're doing it, we're showing good faith and doing it successfully. So we're happy to see that. We want to get those remaining 14 acres leased, and I think I've seen a need that we need to do some marketing for it. So what I'm asking for the board, and you have a draft of the request for letters of interest that I'd like to release, which is basically what we'd like to do is request that people in the public, existing growers or people that want to grow shellfish, seaweed culture, if they're interested in one of these sites, they're just going to provide some real basic information to us about the general area that they want, the species and methods that they would follow. And then I think what we want to do is once we just get a handle on the level of demand, then based upon that, we can figure out what the specific leasing process is going to be, right? And to me, in a real ideal world, we're going to get responses from, just making this up, but right, we have 14 acres, from 7 culturists, each one's 2 acres, and all their methods are compatible. We can, fit them all together in a design that works perfectly and negotiate, reasonable market rate leases with them. Obviously, it's not going to be that perfect, but it's going to be good to gauge, what the level of interest is, so we know how to carve this up. And, if we get a massive amount of interest, then it might be more of a competitive process.
So moved.
Yeah, please.
What would be a scenario where it wouldn't be compatible? To have, for like your example of 7 that want 2 acres.
Thin fish with a lot of food.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, there's only certain species and methods, but I don't know, if one farm, that the only way we're not economically viable is to have the full 14 acres. You know what I mean? I just when I say compatible, I don't think it's incompatible necessarily, but just, I guess the question is, can we meet the demand with what we have, or does it need to be competitive?
Okay.
Does that explain a little better?
Do you have a sense that there is more interest than acreage available?
I don't have a sense, and it's interesting, and actually maybe one of these guys that are farmers can comment more than me, but as you know, this process has been going on a long time. And, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, my understanding of the industry was that there is a huge deficit of nurseries. Like there was a huge need and demand for seed. The farmers weren't able to find enough seed for the farm, and that demand has been reduced some because there's more production of seed now. So there might be less demand for those sites than there was. I tend to be optimistic that we'll be able to lease them, but does that seem correct to you guys? Okay,
I mean, at least locally now it seems like the couple of operations are really up to and running on Hog Island and Starboard Mariculture and
Taylor.
the Taylor
Yeah.
guys and stuff. They only feed their own beast, I think mostly the Taylor guys do. But I've been able to buy stuff from Hog Island and I talked to Chris about some stuff that he got.
Yeah.
Seems like locally it's coming up, but I mean, industry-wide or coastal-wide, I'm not exactly sure how that.
Well, what happened before was, there was some kind of event that happened that knocked down the spats in Puget Sound, and possibly in a wider area. And so there was a hole in the spat supply because there was this like ocean oscillation event. And so I think we're sitting prettier than the other, like Puget Sound is more subject to those acidification oscillations.
Yeah.
So that puts us in a stronger market position if we're less likely to experience these failures that drove kind of a frenzy of like, where do we get spats? Because they all died under certain conditions in certain locations.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. We'll
Like recovered memories.
And obviously, we have great water quality, we have proven success of other operations within that same area.
And these, if it's fast, these are able to be shipped out of the area, right?
They are,
Yeah, disease-free.
Yeah.
Is there any other comments from the board? I have a question. Has there been discussion, I know, reading through the request for letters of interest and what you said, of what the strategy will be if there is more interest in available space? They could have to move to a competitive.
I come back to the board to discuss that, I think. We could come up with a staff recommendation for it. That's my understanding.
So for now, it's just we're going to take letters of interest,
Yeah.
use of interest in what, see how it all fits together as a puzzle.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't fit together, then come back to the board.
That's correct.
So if it's low key and the market demand is low, then it can be kind of almost casually negotiated.
Right.
But if there's a frenzy, then we have to set up a level competition so that we don't favor, and we, you know, as a government agency, we're supposed to maximize our return on this thing. So, you know, if it's hot, then it'll be worth more, it'll take us more time.
Yeah, then you put it really well, and that is my recommendation. Obviously, there are other options, which, you know, I didn't put in writing, but we could go out straight out for a competitive bidding process on it. But this is my recommendation, is to gauge the market.
So this is an initial market gauge, and then.
And it'd be a first
might
round.
come back,
Again, we're already working, the only entity that we're actively working on right now is HSU on the pilot UV project. They have grant funding, so it's sort of a different thing. They have no UV filter in the bay right now, so they'd be just testing it out for pioneering to see if it can be commercially done. Little separate, little different obviously than a commercial operation.
All right. So are we leaving it open to the intent of, say, an individual looking for all of it versus an acre or, you know, size?
Yeah, I mean, if someone comes in like that, it'll be we'll have to be grouped.
Okay. I do, well, there was this earlier comment about the purpose that originally Headwaters, there was a strong intent about helping the small operations and not a large conglomerate coming in and taking it all.
Yeah, why don't, I think, you know, I'd recommend that, you know, that we'll release this for maybe 30 or 45 days, and then once it's over, I'll come back to the board to make a recognition.
I think it's good to get public here as we go too.
Things you can weigh in on.
Yeah, we're not agreeing to any leases or anything at this point. We're just agreeing to release a letter of interest.
That's correct.
If we agree to it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's all. Yeah. Although I will say, just for the HSU project, I think we're coming to a lease. For about 0.6 acres.
But that'll still have to come back to the board first.
Yeah. I'd like to bring that back to the board next month.
Great.
All right.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a cool project.
Yeah.
Anything else on the board, or can I go to the public? Go to the public.
Ken Sawatsky, I strongly applaud moving forward this in the manner you're moving forward. I think it's a great way to go about this. For a long time, I felt like leveling the playing field as far as business goes is not an objective that's probably mandated to you folks, but it's something that's right and fair. And to see that being brought forward, I felt like, you know, people like Sebastian and Todd and any of the small growers who would like to put together maybe a group, because none of them could do it individually. I'm happy to partner up with those people and provide my expertise, which is funding and financing. Theirs is boots on the ground, many years of experience. And I'm looking forward to trying to see if they're willing to do that or interested in doing that. And if they feel they are, then that's something that I feel is doable. And I think it's in the best interest of the community to have them not be held hostage because they don't have access on an ongoing basis to prime product they need to bring to fruition as far as their final product. In other words, I'd like to see them be able to go through the whole process, including this little piece of the puzzle, and have a guaranteed source for this rather than, like I say, being held hostage by the big boys. I like seeing the smaller people have a fair playing field, and this is the way we can do it. And so I'm hopeful that I will be involved with, if they're willing to do so, as far as making that happen. And I'm hopeful that you folks will take the consideration of considering that kind of a project. And although you can't give it preferential treatment, at least let it have an equal playing field as far as our ability to participate, as far as the little people out there. So that's a request. I did have one comment that's relevant to this, but I didn't get to ask it on your other leases, was if an individual, let's say myself, were to acquire property and were interested in directly leasing to Sebastian and Todd and other people, rather than leasing to you to sublease out, is that something that would be considered, especially if we went into the process trying to get the permitting done with willing people that were already committed? You said you didn't want to go through the process without it actually coming to fruition. And so maybe sometime, Adam, we can talk about that to find out what your attitude is, that if you don't want to make a comment at this time on that. Thank you for my opportunity.
You're talking about the intertidal.
I am, yes. I neglected to grab that before, so I just thought, since we're still talking shellfish leashing, that would be a question that I can deal with Adam at another time. So thank you.
It seems like something that could be, is there a reason why the leases would go through the Harbor District instead of directly from the landowner? Was that your question, Ken?
No, if any landowner were to permit shellfish culture on their property, there'd be, I don't even think we really have a say if they didn't want to farm it themselves or if they wanted to lease it to a private entity. We're one of the regulatory agencies.
We would still hold the permit.
We would hold a permit, but not the lease. Mm-hmm. The leases and the permits are separate.
Yeah, that seems to make sense.
You can permit your own farm and use it.
Are there any other comments or discussion from the public? Back to the board, and so
Sebastian changes.
Sneak it in under the wire there.
Almost napped. That was interesting what Sebastian Alberthok, Rodeo Farms and Humboldt Bay Provisions. That was interesting what Kent was saying right there. I thought that was kind of an interesting take on some kind of group approach as far as working up some of this subtitle projects. I had an interest in some subtitle, but as Adam had mentioned, they said that they through the dye study that was done by the feds a little while ago, that area that's on the south side of the bridge, all that channel is not for adult product or holding or wet storage or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of disappointed on that, but that's how the thing goes. But I'm really excited to see more seed producers come into the Bay, hopefully, and also to see how this HSU grant project would go, because I was kind of interested in that, but I don't have any way to monetize it, so it would be just like a plaything. But if somebody can actually figure out how to monetize it and we have a decent model that could be scaled, then that would be something I'd really be interested in. Thank you very much.
The world eats a lot of seaweed.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, bringing it up back to the board then. We have an item, and we had a motion and a second already. So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Did you? Well, good. I was being hard. We taking a break now or what?
No, I think we're gone.
7C.
We're on 7C. Update regarding short and long-term Woodley Island Marina and Fields Landing boatyard dredging strategies.
is, so I included a couple of copies of the staff report over there if anybody is interested in it. And I have a previous presentation that we did on the dredging strategy, but I'm not going to show it unless everybody wants to see it. You know, in essence, we're trying to stay the course is what we're doing. You know, last year we kind of charted the pathway where we were looking at the concept of moving forward with getting the permits. Really, is the first problem with not dredging is we didn't have the permits to dredge. We now have 2 different permits to dredge. We can dredge Woodley Island Marina, but we can also dredge Fields Landing, and we can take the material to goods, or we can take it to the regional, we call it the Regional Sediment Management Facility, which is at the former pulp mill, and then offload the material and either dewater the material in the former clarifiers that are at there, or we can build upland dewatering cells at the pulp mill. We have all those permits from all the agencies, and we can do that for several years in the future. The rule number 1 in the dredging world is that, in my opinion, is that somebody's going to shut you down at some point, and so we need to have as many options as we can. Because that way, if they say, well, I'm sorry, you can't do it this way, we can still do it this other way. And we can still go the other way because there's all kinds of regulations that are out there that will change, and that's just the nature of the beast. And so, really, we developed the strategy, and the core premise of the strategy is that we want to dredge the least amount of material as we possibly can. It's so darn expensive that you don't want to dredge material if you don't have to. And typically what happened was we just dredged 14 foot across the board. We went in and looked at the contours and established contours of the marina, and essentially dredging to match the depths of your fleet. If you look at the drafts of the fleet that we have, it tells you what their drafts are. You only want to dredge to the draft of your boats, and you don't want to go deeper. If you have, 10-foot boats or 8-foot boats, you don't need to go 14 feet. It's just a waste of money, which we can't afford to do. And then we're going to have to get to moving the fleet to match the contours. We've definitely got leases in certain places where we have deeper boats that it's just too shallow, and they're always going to be shallow. They need to be moved to the deeper locations because we just can't afford to dredge in some of these locations. We have to do these annually, take soundings or surveys of the bottom of the bay each year, so we can start to find out what the natural or the way the contours of the bay want to go. And again, try to mimic the natural environment as much as we can to dredge the least amount of material as we can. So if we go in and do smaller dredging cycles, like a 1 to 4 year interval, and just continually dredge over and over again, as opposed to what was done in the past, which is really in 8, 10, 12-year cycles, where we don't dredge until we're in emergency situations, and then we all say, look, we don't have any money because we didn't save up money for the last 10 years, how are we going to get this done? And so the goal is to dredge every year, and then get into about a 4-year cycle, 3 or 4 year cycle, where we're running through the marina constantly. We don't ever want to let our permits expire. We have permits now, we want to make sure that they never, ever expire. And so we need to be ahead of the curve and never let them expire. And if there's new regulations that come on board, then we need to be prepared to adjust our permits and adjust our strategy so that we can stay ahead of the curve. Dredging it's never ending. There's always more dirt that comes down the pile. It's a never-ending project. It will never be done. We just constantly have to be thinking that we're dredging. And you have to, like this year, dredging is going to happen in the next couple of weeks. We have permits. We have the contracts for them to dredge. They should be up here within the next week, hopefully, to start dredging the Chevron dock. Then they're going to go to Fields Landing Boat Yard, and then they're going to go to Woodley Island Marina and take approximately 20,000 cubic yards of material from Woodley Island Marina. The key thing here is we have already been meeting with the dredge subcommittee and planning what are we going to do next year. It takes that long. You have to plan for your dredging event next year before your current dredging cycle is in place right now. We have to be preparing for the methods that we're going to do, the areas that we're going to dredge, what is the contracting method, where are we going to dispose it. All of those things, we have to be a year ahead of the curve within our dredging cycle. And so that's what we've been doing with the dredging subcommittee, that we've been continuing to work on those factors. We've been saying for a long time that the suction dredging is the most efficient method, and that's definitely our preferred method that we'd like to do. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get permits to do it. And so even though it's the most efficient, we can't not dredge just because we're waiting to do the most efficient method. We still have to continue to dredge. And so the second most efficient method is basically to use the clamshell excavator or a crane, because that's what we have permits for, and then put it in a hopper and then pump it from the hopper directly to Woodley Island, or I'm sorry, the Redwood Marine Terminal 2, or wherever the disposal location is. That's the second most efficient measure. And the key with that, that's different than just sucking it right out of the ground, is that you don't impact long-fin stomach. Because with the suction dredge, the issue is that you're sucking right out of the bay and you're taking the fish. If you use the clamshell, you put it in the hopper, and then you suck out of the hopper, you're not impacting the long-fin snout. And so therefore, the permitting is relatively easy with that, and the disposal costs get less in that method. The method that we're going to be doing this year, which is the next, which is basically using the clamshell and then going right out to hoods. We found we've been up to bid now a couple of times in the last couple of years, and it's pretty consistent that the mobilization cost for the belly dump barge, basically the barge that comes in and then they take it out to hoods and it opens up on the bottom. It's a really specialized piece of equipment. It costs between $600,000 to $900,000 to mobilize that up here. That $600,000 to $900,000 cost alone kills dredging for Humboldt Bay. That's traditionally what is it's too darn expensive, $600,000 to $900,000. And that's why we've really been looking at these other methods and why we bought the dredge in the first place. Because of the cost of the dredge, as Richard has said a number of times, the cost of the dredge, we use it one time, we basically got our dredge for free because of the mobilization costs. And so there really is two different methods that you can dredge. And traditionally, when you contract out the dredge, or what we've done in the past, is the contractor, what I would call, get in and get out as fast as you can. They basically bring in as big as the crew that they have. They're doing 24 hours a day, or at least 18-hour-a-day, shifts, and they're doing 2,000 or more cubic yards a day, and just getting in and out as fast as they can. The second method, which is what we're really striving to get at, is slow as you flow, every year consistently. If we develop a strategy that we're looking to do 12 to 18,000 cubic yards a year, and you say between the work window, which is between July and October 15th, you can easily get 60 working days out of it. And if you do between 200 to 300 cubic yards a day, 5 days a week, you can get 12 to 18,000 if you do that for 60 days. We have plenty of time, and it's really sort of slow as you go method. Doing that over the full 60-day window with a much smaller crew, and as opposed to contracting out and then having them bring in big crews and mobilizing them. Those are just the two different strategies that we've been looking at. And sometimes it's cheaper to hire out and bring them in. Like Dutro, we took advantage of it. One of the key things is that what we found, and what's happening this time, is if, like, say, Chevron and Woodley Island go out to bid at the same time, we can share the mobilization cost. That's $600,000. You split that in two, you reduce your mobilization costs in half. And so with the long-term dredging sediment management plan that EIR, that Adam is working on, if we can get time our dredging and coordinate the dredging events for the city of Eureka, Chevron, and some of the other people, we can share the mobilization costs and greatly reduce the amount of cost that it has, and essentially complete these tasks. So on the disposal side, originally we were looking at disposing at smaller lagoons. We have an active coastal development permit there. As we've been saying for a long time, the water board is insisting that we basically put liner in there before we can dispose of the material there. You know, the key problem with the liner is that it's super expensive, but in addition to that, what happens with the liner, when you water it, in the wintertime when it rains, it basically turns into a lake. And you put the liner in it turns into a lake. And there's all kinds of problems with water management and other things when you basically have a lake. The second problem is when you go in and you water the material, you're going to take it out and then you're going to take it to a place to reuse it. You're going to go in there with heavy equipment, it's going to puncture holes in your liner. So you're going to end up replacing the liner over and over again. It's just not cost effective to use that method of putting the liner in. So I had mentioned that we had the permits to do these upland dewatering sites at Redwood Marine Terminal 2. What we really want to do for this next year, and our goal is, the town of Samoa is required to elevate their property for sea level rise and tsunami, and there is in excess of 100,000 cubic yards of material left. Previously, Danco has told us that they are willing to accept our material, and so we're getting ready to have meetings with them, and then what we want to do is apply for the county to get a fill permit so that we can take our dredge material there, and then we don't have to move it twice. Because we would take the material and put it in the fill location, let it dewater, and then keep it there and not have to move it twice. And then the goal is, with the town of Samoa, then the sea level rise is the same issue on our property, which is right below them, our Redwood Marine Terminal 2 property. And essentially, we could just keep filling and filling and filling that area and dealing with the sea level rise, and at the same time as dealing with our sediment management of the Woodley Island Marina and most likely Woodley Island, Eureka Small Boat Basin, and some of the other docks in the area too, of having a permanent long-term solution for that. And so we're working on that strategy, and we're going to be applying for those permits to do that, in addition to these other permits that we already have to get the permission to put in the fill. The key issue that's always been the problem, and still is the problem, is funding. Where do we get enough money to do this? A couple of years ago, the board adopted the dredge surcharge. The dredge surcharge brings in about $100,000 a year of revenue into the district. The current contract is for $620,000 for approximately 20,000 cubic yards. That's $500,000 shortfall between what we're collecting in the dredge surcharge. It's just not enough money. And as Commissioner Board of Supervisor Wilson has told me numerous times, and I fully agree, is that there's no way that the fleet that we have will ever be able to 100% pay for the dredging with the dredging surcharge. It's too expensive. It's way too expensive. So we need to find ways to continue to reduce the cost of this, but at the same time, we have to collect additional fees in order to pay for dredging. And really the bottom line is that if we're going to implement an ongoing dredging strategy where we're dredging every year, then we have to have a stable income stream to go forth and put the money aside to put it in. With the dredging surcharge fee that the board has established, the funds go into a segregated account, and it's specifically separated, and there's an annual audit that says the money can only be used for the dredging. So if we raise money in the dredging surcharge fee and put it into the segregated account, and then it's only used for those purposes, then that's a way that we can ensure that we can get annual dredging program. Lastly, on the long-term solution is that Adam is working on the long-term sediment management plan, where we're working on, where we've essentially looked at every, boat ramp, private dock, marina, all the places that we need to dredge in the bay, and doing an overall environmental impact report for that, and then looking at the beneficial reuse locations that the sea level adaptation plan has identified. and then doing the environmental impact report so that we can start clearing the pathway, not just for the harbor district's dredging and Woodley Island Marina, but also to help all of the docks, Green Diamond, Curdy, Snyder, all of the docks and the marinas in the state, that we can help to streamline that process and also help to find the disposal locations so they can dredge affordably as well. The same issues that are affecting the Harbor District are also affecting Eureka and all of the other people that are responsible for dredging in their areas. And so we're trying to help everybody in coming up with an overall solution that the whole community can benefit from. And so, lastly, and most importantly, is we're going to dredge by the October 15th, and things are changing on exactly the locations of where we're going to be dredging. We're working those out with Dutra, and so we're still dredging the same amount of material. It's just we're slightly fine-tuning where the exact locations of the dredging is going to be. And so I can't tell you exactly where those are going to be. I just am saying there's a little bit of fluctuation that we have in the exact locations. And it really has to do with the type of equipment that they're bringing in, because they can only fit in, these are big pieces of equipment, and there's certain areas that they have to be able to fit. And so we're making some fine-tune adjustments in the exact locations of where they're going to be dredging. And as soon as those decisions are made, then we'll put that information out to the board and the public so that everybody is aware of where the dredging locations will be this year. So thank you very much.
Comments from the board? Patrick, go ahead.
If the Army Corps of Engineers was dredging the inner reach, this point would be moved, because if that channel was dredged to the depth that they're supposed to, which they haven't done for 10 years, then the mud would evacuate the marina and go into the federal channel. And if they were doing that routinely, essentially they'd be taking our mud to the hoods, and we wouldn't have to worry so much about maintaining the marina. And so that, I kind of feel like I've been asleep at the switch on this one, but the Army Corps of Engineers, if they were in the inner reach, this problem would go away. I want to take issue with Larry in a very friendly way. In terms of the harm to long-fin smelt from the suction dredge versus the clamshell. The clamshell picks up mud, redistributes pollution, kills fish eggs, fish can't eat lunch. It's the dirtiest way you can remove sediment, and the cutterhead doesn't have anywhere near the same amount of disturbance. And so it's not a rational policy. The cutterhead dredge has been used in the bay for decades, and it's a strategic and useful tool. So I look forward to the day that Adam gets this resolved for us. He's working with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. But in the event that we cannot get accommodation on the smelt and on the eelgrass, we need to go forward with a white paper emanating from the Harbor District, similar to the Marine Life Protection Act, that goes then to the cities around the bay, the county, and then the NGOs that might otherwise oppose us if it was environmentally irresponsible. And if they are on our side and we are all alive and we all sign on, then we'll get what we need, and not until. And so I have the greatest faith in Adam, but I also have a sense that this is intractable without more political focused energy. So I hate to be like a broken record, but I think we're really making strides. And Gil Falcone from the Northwest Regional Board has said that their board has a policy that's in sync with us disposing it's not dredge spoils, it's clean sediment, essentially, from the floor of the bay on the Humboldt Peninsula. Everything by default is like, they could drink that water, that's municipal, you have to protect it. It already has salt. We have a surplus of fresh water that's already treated on the peninsula, and we need to be able to basically do the fill on the peninsula without the liners. There's enough plastic in the ocean. We don't need to go destroy $100,000 worth of plastic every time we, put sediment out there. So I believe I just stated the scientific facts of the case, and so we will continue to pursue policy that's in accordance with science, even if it's out of fashion.
Thank you, Patrick. Stephen?
Thanks for all of the hard work on this. I mean, I agree with most of what Pat said, except for that, whether that's the more economic and environmentally way to dredge, it's not the way that we're allowed to dredge right now. So I really applaud that you're finding a way that we can dredge, and we're gonna have to do that and pursue both paths simultaneously, to work on the regulations, but also find ways to dredge. But I mean, one of the big things that I hear and that we're gonna need to find creative solutions to is the funding. We can't get enough fees out of the marina to pay for the dredging of the marina. So we have to find ways to identify other funding streams that can pay for that. And I don't know what they are, but whether there's anything from the county or other jurisdictions that can come to help with a county asset with the bay to dredge. And also, of course, continuing the open dialogue with the Army Corps to get the inter-channel dredge, because that is huge. I don't necessarily, that might be an optimistic that the problem will entirely go away, but I think it will be much less severe getting the channel for dredge. Thanks for, when you came to interview, when we hired you, the priority, dredging. So I'm glad to see that. Well, I'm excited to see the dredge out there.
Larry?
Well, also, Patrick, we're supposed to make money when we dredge Eureka. So in other words, it's always going to be a cost for us, but part of our equation when we procured this dredge was that Eureka's going to pay, and we're going to make money when they get dredged.
Yeah, but that's a nice story, but it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
If we have a permit,
But we don't have it.
no, but the other thing I want to say is we need this permit by next July. I'm sick of this. It's just like, why are we subservient to government processes that don't allow us to conduct the people's business, that protect the bay, allow us to restore it ecologically, and to promote commerce in the bay? And so I'm not going to back down on this. I don't want to plan contingency for us dumping stuff in the hoods. I don't want to plan a contingency for us to use the clamshell that befouls the bay. I don't want to have any contingencies that doesn't fully allow us to redistribute sediment to cope with climate change. It's happening. The crust is deforming here. We have more rapidly advancing climate change. We have to have the handcuffs off on policy. All right, great. That's it. I won't say anything the rest of the night. Thanks for you.
No, you have to do that, not the rest of the night, but let's let Larry talk.
Just a couple points thinking about, and being on the dredging subcommittee, this is something that is very important to me, and it's a discussion every week. But there's a couple thoughts that maybe if fellow commissioners have the opportunity to have that conversation, especially with the Corps, is maybe we can get to a point, or a goal is to get to a point that we can demonstrate our bay management and dredging management in a way where maybe they pay us for dredging down the road, because their hands are tied where they don't have enough equipment and people to dredge, and maybe that's a goal. It might be too lofty for you to grasp, but that might be a goal to go after, is we can demonstrate to the Corps that we can dredge and be cooperative that way. And then another point is, like what I talked about in the meeting, is that this is one of those good points about the port master plan and appealing to the Coastal Commission to have our own local coastal plan and be a little more control of our own bay. So those are things that lead into it, I think, as far as dredging long-term strategy goes.
Thank you, Commissioner Doss. Commissioner Marks?
Well, since I've already lost all trust in
The giant?
well, not the giant. I want to know how they take all those suction dredges up in Alaska. If we just said that we were having a gold rush down here in Humboldt Bay and just got out of the way and watched them use all those suction dredges all over the bay and give them a place to put the dregs. Hey, I'll think down the box. No, I've totally lost my confidence in regulatory agencies and their decisions on what we do with the dredge. I mean, there was ample time for all sorts of agencies to put in their 2 cents when we first purchased that dredge. You know, there could have been, none of those people were coming around saying you're not going to be able to use it or permit it or anything, because it was the exact same dredge that's done it 10 years ago. Same dredge, same process, same everything. We've talked this over and over and over again. So, can we get rid of the dredge? Yeah, we may have to do more dredging. It just seems insane, but that's the way it is.
Is my turn?
Just FYI, just can I make 2 points?
Yes, you may. Please, Adam.
One thing that's just kind of interesting, I've been talking to people that do a ton of dredging in San Francisco Bay, in the Delta, and interestingly, we're not alone in this issue. Down there's actually more species that are preventing them from using suction dredging, like Delta smelt, and actually spawning herring populations. Marinas in San Francisco Bay are having these stem cell dredging, which is taking longer and is more expensive, and it's just facing the exact same challenge with we're on a more optimistic note. I'm actively working with DFW, and I feel like we're making progress and starting to develop some mitigation strategies. I'm also working with Caltrans to look at potential partnerships to reduce our mitigation costs. So we are pursuing incidental state permits for long-term smells.
Thank you all. It's not fun, and it's sometimes very frustrating, but we will get there. We are getting there. We are going to dredge. The dredge is here. They haven't begun down at the Chevron dock yet. They're doing some maintenance work on the dock, but they will, and they don't have much to dredge before they come here. So, sounds like everything's a go. Is that my understanding, Mr. Zerline?
Everything's a go. The only thing we're waiting for right now is the weather.
It's nice in the bay. Right now the bay is really nice.
Yeah.
Just weather to get the dump scow up here.
Yeah.
Should be here on, I would say, Monday or Tuesday. Tug's departing for it on Friday.
So you heard that. Monday or Tuesday the scow will be here. Okay.
San Francisco.
So, so that was just the update. You kind of moseyed into our executive director getting paid by the word there. Moseyed into the next item on our agenda. But before I do that, anybody in the audience would like to comment on our dredging strategies?
I do.
Thank you.
I wish to start off with, Patrick, you owned a stereo store, a record store, so you can sound like a broken record. That's okay. Richard, you didn't, so you quit sounding like a broken record.
It works.
Yeah. Basically, I think you're kind of getting an idea of what's happening, and keep trying to impress upon people like Nordic Farms, and I said, your fatal flaw, there's 3 Achilles heels or whatever. We're in California. We're in California. We're in California. If you don't realize that now, then, I don't know, Dorothy could click her heels and maybe we'll be somewhere else, but this is where we're at. This is what's going to happen, just like you said, down south, it's going this way. Your common sense thing here, of course, there's always going to be economy of scale in anything you do. In other words, if you see a big mine, they're not running 10-yard dump trucks. They're running those 50-yarders or 100 or whatever they are. And so you're never going to find a small guy on small little projects who can ever come close to competing with a professional who knows what he's doing. Your timing, of course, is of the essence here. How often does Chevron dock get dredged? How often are you going to be able to put together something? I'm guessing it's every 3 years rather than every year, but I don't know. This is something that historically you can tell how often you have to have that dredging. That's when you need to do it. That's when you need to spread your, like you say, your mobilization costs as thin as you can for yourselves. Get everybody's work done by the big boy, come in here and get her done. You're never going to beat that price as far as doing it any other method or any other thing. You can try it. The other key thing is every time, like has been said, you touch that material, your costs go through the roof. In other words, if you have to put it in a hopper, rewater it, take it somewhere else to dewater it, and then move it out of there, that will never be able to compete with that scow going out there to hoods. Now, the good thing is the last coastal commission the Army Corps already was coming forward as far as expanding hoods. I don't think you're going to, they met no resistance I saw from the Coastal Commission here, so that will always be an option, it sounds like. But I think your other plans and everything you're going to try, other than the fantastic thing if you can get someone to take it. Pay someone to take it. You know, if you have to pay someone a little bit to take it, where you can go ahead and have it transported directly to them somehow. But again, you're double handling material then. So I doubt whether you're going to be able to make that pencil out. But feasibility study, that's what you need, showing you both methods, and I'm sure Larry's capable of bringing that to you. But I think, how often, does anybody know how often these other people dredge, like Schneider? I mean, is it every 3 years?
Schneider hasn't dredged in years.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 years.
Okay, so that probably gives you an idea as far as how often you may want to plan on your dredging, so you coincide with everybody. Put your package together. It's economy of scale.
One thing I just want to say, it's not that different in other states.
Pardon?
It's not that different in other states or other harbors.
Other than Alaska, it sounds like.
It's not that much different there.
I can't do it up there anymore.
Susan Penn, Kent kind of touched on it, but if Danco needs all this fill, we should really be selling it to them. I mean, if we're looking for income, they're going to pay somebody for it. If we've got it, we could be the somebody. Fill's expensive.
Thanks, Susan. Any other comments on our dredge strategy?
Grants could
seeing
pay
that, I'm
for
going to move
sediment
on.
redistribution.
I want to move on to 7D. Consider adopting Resolution 2019-10, amending the fee schedule for Harbor District properties and operations.
Okay, so there was a resolution that we sent out after the fact, the actual resolution. All the exhibits were included in the packet. Essentially, the core premise of what we're looking to do is, obviously is raise some additional fees, but getting other fees more in line with what the actual costs are. And so there's a few things that I'm just going to highlight. I'm not going to go over every individual fee. I'm just going to go over a few things. It's basically one of the core pieces for the whole thing is, currently the ordinance and the lease agreements with all the tenants says that you should pay for, your rent should be based upon the length of your trip or the length of your boat, whichever is greater. That's not how we have been charging people for the last several years. We charge them based upon the length of their boat, regardless of whether they use the whole slip or not. And so we're basically just recommending that we implement the ordinance and the lease agreement as it's currently drafted. Then the second thing is we really looked at Crescent City and Brookings and a few other harbors. And one of the things is that basically there's really is two primarily different kinds of tenants that we have: long-term tenants and then the short-term transient tenants. Whether you have somebody that's just coming into the bay and they stay for a day, or they may have their boat here for a month. Well, right now, we charge them the exact same rate as we do our long-term tenants. And so what we're proposing to do is to keep our long-term tenants, the slip fees, exactly the same as what they are right now, and not raise the slip fees on the long-term tenants at all, but instead to raise the slip fees on our short-term tenants. Transient tenants. And what's going to happen is there's a couple of things that are going on. We have several what you might consider long-term tenants, but they don't have any long-term leases with they essentially operate month to month. What we're anticipating is going to happen is some of those long-term tenants that are classified as transient tenants, as soon as we jack up the rent, they're going to just apply for the permanent lease is what's going to happen. And the second thing is that a lot of people come to the front counter that are transient tenants and they're like, wow, your fees are cheap. You know how much we paid in Cantilever, or you know what we paid this other place? The transient fees are just, they're cheap. And this is kind of the normal thing that you do in a marina is you would have higher fees for transient tenants and cheaper fees for the permanent tenants. Probably the largest item would be to recommending that we increase the dredge surcharge. to come closer in line with the fees. And I kind of did a table that's in attachment B at the very back, where you can look at the length of the boat, and then what the current fee is that we do on a month and an annual basis, and then with the two options that we have with the fee increases and the dredge surcharge fee. So what that would mean for, say, a 30, 40, 50-foot boat, how much the increase would be on a monthly basis and an annual basis. So then, currently, there's no charge or additional charge for any liveaboards that we have in Woodley Island Marina. If you go to Eureka, you go to the other marinas, they all charge a fee for liveaboards. And so we may want to consider, there's kind of this two different situations that we have. Number one, we need to plan for what the actual costs are. And so if we have a new tenant that comes in and they say that we want to have a liveaboard, then we would start charging them the fee at the rate that we have immediately. Because if they're a tenant, they would go in right away. We may want to consider with the existing tenants of having a phase-in plan so that the fee doesn't kick in all at the same time, but that we have a phase-in plan for some of the live-aboard units. But we really believe that if a new tenant wants to come on board and do a liveaboard, well then they should just pay the full fee right off the bat. Because they're brand new, why should we phase that in? And then we're also proposing to establish a special event fee. Currently, when the Boy Scouts or anybody comes in and uses the space, we don't charge them anything. There's no fee at all. They use the restrooms, we clean up. So we've included relatively modest. If you compare these fees to any place else, these are pretty darn cheap. They're pretty darn cheap. And so it could be that they could go even higher. But in my mind, we should start to initiate some fees for some of the events that are taking place here, just to kind of recover the cost, because we have our maintenance crew here, we're setting up the barricades, cleaning the restrooms, doing all of these kinds of things. Lastly, and then I'd entertain going into any specific ones you wanted to go over. At the very end, and I guess on page 71, and it's really on page 72, which is on the 72 of 74, it deals with the harbor surcharge. And so within the harbor surcharge, what's happening right now is this, currently there are two fees under the harbor surcharge. And essentially the harbor surcharge fee was designed when my understanding is that basically when they did the deepening project, the harbor surcharge fee was supposed to cover the loans that we have. We currently pay about a little over $200,000 a year for the loan payment for the harbor surcharge, but we only bring in about $100,000.
For the deepening project.
For the deepening project. And so, I'm sorry, not the dredge surcharge. This is for the main channel when they deepened it. And so what we're looking to do is to get enough revenue and to closely approximate how much we're paying for that deepening project. Because again, it's all these kinds of things that we're not collecting enough money for the services that we're providing, and the ships that come in should be paying for those services that we provided those dredge fees. The second thing is and that's what's called the cargo fee. And then there's also a vessel fee, and what the ordinance says is that that's supposed to be for the district to provide emergency services, mutual aid, administration, promotion, these kinds of things. And so the reality is we really don't collect anything from those. But yet, if there's an oil spill or there were some other things, we really have to be focused on these kinds of activities. And right now, essentially, all of the fuel barges, they don't pay this fee at all. Because they're currently, I believe if it's less than a 20-foot draft, then they don't pay any fees. And so for like oil spills or some of these other things, those are the most likely places that, they might occur for some of those. And then the secondary thing is that we need to be looking to recruit a new bar pilot. And so the idea is that if we can generate some revenue, then we can start to analyze whether we could pay a stipend fee or we could do something else in order to begin to prepare to get a new bar pilot to come in here. And so I wanted to highlight these harbor usage fees and kind of what the thought process behind those are. And just lastly, is there's a couple of these fees, and this harbor surcharge is one of them that were adopted by ordinance. And so in order for those to go into effect, then we're gonna have to come back and adjust the ordinances to allow for those to go into effect. But I wanted to include them in the fees because what our goal is, when we come back and request to amend the ordinance, then we'll write in there that future updates would be handled through the fee resolution, as opposed to having to amend an ordinance every time you do a fee. And so what my goal is we went in, and a number of these fees are kind of scattered in all kinds of different places. So we kind of went in and put all the fees in one location, so it's easy for us to follow and easy for us to administer. And then if you give us direction on this, then we'll come back and we will bring those amendments back to make them in effect. And lastly, and I probably said lastly 4 times, is I'm recommending that you adopt all of the fees with the exception of the Woodley Island fees. I think that we need to kind of give the tenants some more time to think about it and give us all time to think about it. And I'm recommending that you continue it to the next meeting and kind of hear some concerns, and then we can come back and kind of potentially look at some alternatives and some other things to address the Woodley Island fees. But of course, if you want to adopt them tonight, we're open to that as well.
You're assuming we haven't heard anything yet?
Assuming they don't have to good news.
Okay.
I have a process question, Greg, and that is, can you have a resolution that's overarching and pass only part of it?
Within the resolution, the way I drafted the resolution, it takes that into consideration. And so, it says that we're asking you to adopt all the fees, but then in item number A, the Woodley Island Marina fees would not go into effect until the ordinance is adopted or the resolution is adopted. And then that the harbor usage fees would not go into effect until you amended the ordinance.
So moved.
May I speak for a minute?
Hold on, we need.
Oh, I'll stand here.
Yeah, you can stand there.
Okay.
Well, second.
We're not taking it to you yet. The board needs to talk.
Discussion.
So I have a
I
motion
think
and a
there's an
second.
error in this, though, on your...
Hold on, we have a
my
motion
word.
and a second. We'll talk first,
Okay.
and then you can talk. Mr. Safety Commissioner, Safety Chair, whatever, Harbor Safety Committee Chair, President.
Yes.
A motion from Patrick and a second from Stephen.
I interrupted it.
If,
Go ahead.
President, if there is an error that our Harbor Safety Committee Chair has seen, would it be worthwhile to hear what he
Not yet,
said?
not yet. I already told him you guys gotta stand there.
I have a couple questions just in terms of the ordinance, as it says in here, already says that for Woodley Island, it should be charged by the greater of the dock side or the boat. That's how the ordinance already reads now. And so, would that change? Would we be waiting on that change? Are we postponing that change with this resolution, or does that just automatically go into effect because that's how the ordinance is written?
Well, unless I hear direction from you otherwise, we currently have leases with tenants, with the existing tenants, and that we would continue to honor the leases. Because normally you have a fee resolution.
Because the lease has a dollar
lease, and then the lease has, you honor what the rate is that's in the lease. But when we would renew the lease, then the new fee would go in at that time.
Okay, and then also the same kind of thing with the dredge surcharge fee chart, you have boat length, but is the dredge surcharge fee going to be on dock length as well?
Slip length, you mean?
Or slip length, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sorry, the numbers that are included in option A and the option B, those numbers include the dredge surcharge fee, the float replacement fee, and the slip fee.
No, those are all the fees together.
Those are all the fees.
It's not just, that's not just the, okay. All right, well, that's the only questions I have for now.
Commissioner Goss?
Just to clarify on page 63 of 74 in the whole packet, the fee for board meeting agendas is, and minutes, is this going back in our archives to collect documents and copies, or is this for, I don't understand the cost for the board meeting agendas.
I believe what that is that somebody can request to have a paper copy sent to them.
Okay.
And that's what that cost is. If somebody requests that every time you have an agenda, that we send them a copy.
Okay, so it'd be like a year subscription.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
And the Brown Act law.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure what that was.
Commissioner Marks?
I was curious whether council feels comfortable with the wording in this resolution.
I do. I would just like to clarify that under 1A, the Woodley Island Marina fees are set forth in Exhibit E. And so with that clarification, I'm comfortable with the wording of the resolution.
Thank you.
Commissioner Higgins?
No.
Got it? So I got a couple questions. So I thank you for this, Larry. I think this is something we need to talk about. I'm not sure I'm ready to make a decision, but I will go with what the board decides. There's a couple of questions. How do these compare? I'd like to see the numbers from other marinas. I'd like to see where we're at with other ports. I'd like to see how competitive we are, both from a slip rent and shipping costs. I appreciate what you did with the liverboard stuff. I'm sure that's probably going to be less supported than we would like it to be, but I like the fact that you got some wages or some rates in here for the fireboat, the workboat, that sort of stuff. What if you raise the vessel cost for vessels entering the bay, and you said this was they have to be, what's the minimum size for vessels paying $500 to enter and exit the bay? That's on every boat. That's shipping. That's commercial shipping.
I believe that it's less than, you have more than 20-foot draft.
Oh, more than 20-foot draft. Okay.
Yeah. What I'm suggesting is that it apply to all cargoes.
Okay. So instead of just over 20-foot draft, it would include the fuel scow.
That's right.
Okay. So, and then the same would go for the cargo fee of $150 per short ton. The increase from 75 to 150.
That is correct.
Okay. So if what's the financial the financial nut? Would that, if we make these changes, would that pay the loan on the deepening project, the $200K a year?
We currently bring in approximately $100,000 a year in the harbor surcharge. And so if my assumption is if we double the fee, then we would be collecting $200,000, which is approximately the amount of the loan payment that we're making on that.
Okay. Okay. I think that's, we want to, barring unforeseen repercussions, and I'm sure we're going to hear about here in a second from our harbor safety champion. The last thing I have is the dredge surcharge fee. I guess I should have clarified this before the meeting. I was thinking this, because the dredge surcharge is, right now is 25 cents, and the float replacement is 25 cents per linear foot currently, right?
No, 76 cents.
76 and 51, the surcharge, the dredge surcharge, 76? Oh.
So this is the current fee, not the...
The current monthly fee says it's 76. Okay, so what you're proposing here is potentially doubling that, and that doesn't include the dock replacement. Well, there's double and triple. We haven't decided which one we want to do yet, Susan, but...
They're both up there.
But that does not include the dock replacement surcharge of 50 cents, right?
There's sort of, there's two different things that, the fee that's in this table, which is in the attachment B. Correct. That is only the dredge surcharge. Because again, that's the only one that we're proposing to increase.
Okay.
The other fees would remain the same.
And the slip rents would remain the same.
And the slip rents would remain the same. There wouldn't be any increase in those. There may be an increase if there's a length of, the length of the slip. I don't know what that is. Some people may be less, some people may be more. I don't know what that will be on the individual basis.
Well, we should probably do we should probably do a relatively quick, dirty study to see, or analysis to see what impact that's going to have. Because we may or may not want to do it the way we're talking about doing it if we lose money. Because the goal here is to make money, not lose money.
Because it's a flat, we go towards this flat fee, whoever owns the boat knows what they're paying right now, and they could look on the table and say, well, here's how much it would be.
Currently, vessels pay the length of the vessel plus 2 feet, essentially, everyone pays that. So if they paid the slip length, most people would be paying more.
Some of the vessels are longer than the slip lengths.
Yeah, they can be 3% longer, and then in that case, you would pay the length of the vessel. Right now,
whichever more.
Yeah, but some of the vessels are a lot longer than 3% longer than the slip.
Then they'll pay for that. Whichever more.
The ordinance says whichever.
Oh, whichever's more. Okay. All right. Okay. That's all I have. Let's get to Mr. Zerline.
Just one little thing here that I'm a little bit confused about is currently the in and out is .075, and you're going to increase that to .75. Hopefully that's a typo.
Where are you looking at it?
Page 72 in the center, cargo fee.
That's true, the total now is 15 cents per short ton that we charge, not 75 cents.
That's a typo on my part.
Okay. I just don't want Pete to
So
have
let's make
a...
sure we make note of that. So it's .075.
Yes.
.075, and we're going to go to .15.
Well, it's .075, but that's in and out, so we add it together. So the total we charge vessels per short ton is 15 cents. We just add it together. Does that make sense?
And what are we changing it to?
It's the same as that. Here's the way this is set up, is that if you had somebody and they were going to South Bay, say they were going to Woody Murphy's dock, then all they're doing is they're going through the entrance. They would only be charged 75 cents because they're not going into the slow channel.
It's
.075.
Right, that's my problem.
The fee that goes to go through the entrance. So if you're going to South Bay, you're only paying for the entrance fee. But if you go to the small channel, like Green Diamond as an example, then you're going through the entrance, but you're also using the deepening project because we deepened the Samoa channel as well. And so therefore, you're paying the .075 plus an additional .075. Does that make sense?
15 cents.
And what you're proposing increasing it to is .15, not
15 cents.
Well, I thought that they hit the $1.50, but...
That's paid for our dredging.
That was all, Mr. President.
Okay,
So we have those, you made those changes? Thanks, man. Any other comments from the audience? Oh, yeah.
So my question is, how long has this been out to the public? And what kind of outreach have you done before you make a decision? I strongly support Commissioner Dale's, concern about moving forward with this without having questions answered and vetting and some more studies being done. We're not talking 2 months here, but it seems like one meeting would be plenty for maybe to do outreach to everybody who is having an increase here and say, hey, is this some kind of deal breaker, or do you have some justification for not doing it? It's so easy to do it now rather than have them get angry and come in here waving their hands or something, or coming back at you or cutting off business with you. And, of course, getting your comps is really important. If you're coming out 20% ahead of what the other side of the bay is charging here, that's the main one. I mean, that's the real only one that is competitive within the bay that I'm aware of. Maybe there's other docks that do the same thing you do. But you do want to make sure you're apples and apples. You're going to possibly find out you're going to have more money if you're slightly below those people and can keep it slightly below because of not losing tenants and possibly even drawing tenants. And when people come in here for the short term, if they get comparison, of what they're doing over there. So sometimes raising a rate does not necessarily increase your overall income. And so I say move a little bit slow on this one. One meeting's not going to hurt as far as the timing goes on this, and highly recommend you do the outreach and address the concerns of the people, because we've seen it before where you've gone and had done this, and they all come in with a bad attitude, and then that doesn't work for anybody. But just a little outreach, that's all. And I know Susan's here, but I think a lot of other people may want to know how much their total cost is. And these figures you have here really didn't show that I could see quickly what current costs are. In other words, the guy's going to come in here, well, it's $75 more a month. That's what he wants to know. Bottom line, how much more is it going to cost him to be here? Those are the figures you need to get to somebody. Even like me, I like to understand the bottom line difference. But just a suggestion as far as avoiding conflict.
Thank you. Susan?
Okay. First of all, I do have a comment, but first I have a question. Looking at the colored ones with options A and B with the Woodley Island Marina fee and rate schedule.
Which page?
Oh, I have
Page
the one.
65.
Okay, thank you. I stole mine off the bulletin board.
That's why nobody's here talking about
but not until I was walking up. So, but I appreciate you printing these out for us.
Thanks for taking that off the bulletin board, Kim.
Sure, no problem. So, okay, you have slip rates, and then you have scratched out includes maintenance, dredge surcharge, and float replacement fee. So is this including the dredge and float replacement, or is this not including? Because this is roughly what I am paying now in total. It's pretty close. Smidgen over, but not much.
Again, I apologize, I believe that it includes all three of them, the slip fee, the float replacement, and the harbor surcharge.
Okay, as it exists now.
Raising the slip fee at all. The only increase that you should see in this is, again, if you go to this table right here, and if you have a 50-foot boat, if you do the option B, then it would be a $76 per month increase. And that would be the highest, and that would be the total increase that you would see.
Okay.
With a long-term lease. Again, the way we structured this is that we're really trying to increase the fees in the transient tenants, but trying to keep the current tenants as low as we can. And then any money that we collect from the current tenants, then we would deposit that in the dredge surcharge fee, which is annually audited.
All right. Okay, so.
Does that answer your question, Susan?
Well.
It's not clear to me.
It's not clear to me. Also, all right, so if we're looking at attachment B with the proposed dredge surcharge fee increase, if we go with option B, the surcharge fee increase would be $1.52 per foot. Okay, and, you know, for me personally, that's another $91 a month. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just trying to get clarity on what I'm seeing. And that's not what it adds up to on option B on this sheet. So I don't know what the various A's and B's and C's and D's are. I could maybe get this, but you might have the same page number as you. Okay, so if you could clarify that somewhere along the way, that would be good. Then, to get back to, of course, being your liveaboard, first of all, just so that you're aware, Larry, there used to be a liveaboard fee. It was $150 a month, and that increased if you had more than 2 people. When they got the electric meters, they removed that because now everybody was paying their own electricity. I think they found that some of the fishermen were using a whole lot more electricity than some of the liveaboards because of their block heaters. But be that as it may, that was how that transpired. So, you are correct that Brookings and Crescent City charge liveaboard fees. However, electricity is also included in their dock rent. Nobody pays electric on top of this. So for them, the liveaboard basically helps make up for that. Brookings, if I move there, I would actually, with their liveaboard, they're very sweet. For one person, it's $75. For 2, it's $150. And I think if you talk to most of the liveaboards here, they would agree that as a single person, I should not be paying as much as 2 people. I don't use as much electricity as 2 people. But, so they charge $75 a month for one person. My total per year up there, including the liveaboard fee, would be $2,655.60. I am paying just a smidgen under that now before I pay electricity. So, you know, if you want to compare figures, I at least got that far. Crescent City's rates are a little higher, and their base rate is not, but they do charge $150 per boat. Eureka charges a whale of a lot, and when I questioned her, there was a long pause, and she said it's because they've had trouble with liveaboards there, abusing it. I'm assuming she didn't go into detail. I'm assuming perhaps transients come and make use of it. I don't know. All she said was that people abused it. So they're charging, what is it? Over $200 as an additional liveaboard fee. But again, that's much more than anybody else that I talked with. So, application fee, I paid something when I first came in. It was not $200. I don't know why you would feel the need to inspect every year. What are you looking for? We can get a Coast Guard inspection for free. I'm sure they would cover everything you could possibly want to know and probably more. Yeah, I find...
I will say that the Coast Guard has suggested we do that.
That's fine.
For all of our liveaboards and for our charters.
That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But why I should pay an extra $125 to have one of your staff people come and I mean, it'd be paying them handsomely. I don't think they normally make that much per hour, but, yeah, it just, I don't understand the reason for that. So, I think that's about all I've got to say. And we do appreciate living here, you know, so, and we think that we take care of our boats in the place.
I do apologize because I do have this exact same table, and literally the exact same format, and then right below it I have Brookings and Crescent City, and so you could, and I will email that out tomorrow, and we'll post that on the board and make that available, because I have that comparison, I just didn't bring it to the meeting or bring it back.
Ted Romo making a comment. I question if you guys realize the fact that they're going to double the fee for the labor it's going to take to make a copy from $40 to $75. I was wondering, how do you qualify that? Is that in relationship to the hourly rate that your personnel are currently getting? How does that fit to get a piece of paper copied, whatever it is, 1 sheet or 2 sheet, and pay $75 an hour versus $40 an hour now? That's my question. Can you give me how does that rate?
So if you want if you come in and you want a piece of paper, it's 10 cents. You know, we don't charge you $75 an hour, but we have to sit there and make copies for 5 hours. Then that's the rate. If somebody literally wants to have, like Kent, not to pick on Kent, but he sometimes comes in and says, I want to make all of these things. And people come in and they want lots of stuff. And then I do 2-3 hours worth of somebody standing at the copy machine. That's just what happens. But if you want 1 or 2 pieces of paper, then the fee is 10 cents a page.
Okay, but from $40 to $75 an hour? I mean, I'd like to make $75 an hour. I think $40 an hour is reasonable to make copies. That's my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Relating to some of those fees, I think some of these fees, I don't know the last time the district has touched them, but I think they're under rated rates. At the same time, my personal preference is to push this off to the next meeting and give a little more time for everyone to digest this before we take it on as it goes.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman?
I could definitely agree with that, reaching out to some of the people, you know, who would be paying some of these other fees that I'm not familiar with. Just going back to the hourly rate for copying, and just doing budgets myself for many things. It's not just the hourly rate of the person doing the work, but it's the fully loaded rate. Benefits and medical insurance are usually as much as an hourly rate, plus all the indirect and everything else. So an hourly rate that you see as a charge-out rate is not anything near of what somebody gets paid.
I'll still get files of copies at 70 or 40, doesn't matter to me.
We're just, that's a fee directly targeted at one person.
And this is, you know, I guess I think it's a really good thing that we look at our fees and bring them up to date. I don't know if it's something that needs to happen at this meeting. So I wouldn't be opposed to putting it off another meeting, having comparisons and gathering more public input on it.
Are there any consequences of us not moving this evening versus moving next meeting?
You have
other than we'll at least triple the audience, I'm sure.
You have a motion and a second on the floor. I think we need to vote on that, and you should go ahead and then open up for make another motion.
Or rescind, I'll have to rescind your motion.
We can
Yeah,
rescind it, or we can modify it.
I was thinking about withdrawing my motion if the consensus was to postpone and there aren't any real concerns.
How you feel?
Can I do that?
Yes, you can. Sure.
Okay, I want to rescind my motion, but that also requires the second.
I rescind my second.
All right, so now I move that we table this. There you go.
I'll second. Okay.
All right, he's off. All right. Move
So
the second table.
we rescind it, now I want to talk, can I get a chance to talk? Okay, so, what I would like to see before we see this again, whether it's next meeting or the meeting after, is I would like to see the comparisons, I would like to see the comparisons of the various ports, in a fairly clear and understandable comparison, what the current fees are, what we're proposing to change, what the resultant difference is to our tenants, and to our shippers, how it's going to add up or change the ability to pay some of these surcharges, and dredging fees, what the resultant impact to our budget will be. Is it even worth having 300 people in here to scream and yell? Number two, and now I'm all mixed up here, Susan. The $75 an hour is for document requests, public documents, is honestly, in my opinion, under adequate, because it takes your highest paid people to do a lot of that. So when you have a specific request, like a FOIA request, and Ken knows all about this, he's got to go through multiple emails and documents to figure out which ones apply, which ones don't. All right, which ones have, which ones can be distributed, which ones not. It's not an easy project, and it frequently has to be the executive director. It can't be staff doing it, right? So I don't have a problem with that. The liverboard fees, I'm sorry, Susan. I think I would like some more input from you on that. But we've been down this road before, and we just want to be fair, but we do not want to be. We don't want to give away the house, and that's our goal. Leroy, if you could make sure that we're on board, you're on board with the cargo fee, and it meets the language. Now, the dredge surcharge, I'd like to see the dredge surcharge, the dock replacement fee separated out so we can see what the increases are and what the impacts are both to our bottom line and to our customers. And then if it takes longer than the next meeting, I don't know. But it seems like we should be able to have that done by the next meeting.
Are you going to pay $70 an hour to have him do that?
No, well, hell yes I am. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I think you were.
Well, and we'd all be happy to help. Anybody on this board would be happy to help if you need help.
I feel like I have everything that you've asked for. I
thought I knew you did.
One thing that I don't have, and that is honestly the comparison of the harbor surcharge fees, because every port is so darn different, and the fee that we have is specific to the repayment of the deepening project. What happens in the different ports is they all have different fees for different things, and so I don't know. I could work with Leroy and maybe. And I've also talked to Tim about this a little bit because he sees Coos Bay and other ones. But that one is going to be the hardest one for me to do.
And really, for me, the key thing is that increase going to be adequate to meet that debt repayment?
You got to find that perfect sweet spot, which as much as possible, but not going to discourage anything.
So I think for me, it's just like if we could see also a comparison of like, what is the net? So when you add these things in, what does that do to our competitiveness between ports. So that would be like the total per foot, including all charges and slip fees.
I gotta tell you, it's not a good time for the marine industry to be increasing fees on our customers. It just, I mean, as hard as it is to sit here and not be able to pay for dredging, it's not going to be easy on our customer base to increase fees on. Even, you know, but it needs to be done, and we need to talk about it, but it sure would be nice if they just had a couple of booming years catching whatever they catch. All right, so we have a motion and a second to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
I'd like to make a motion to, in favor to adopt the next item as we go with it.
Prepare and release solicitation of letters of interest.
Second.
Yes.
You jumped the gun.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, that's...
You volunteered.
Sure. Even the keys, I'll go drive it. Yeah.
I'll volunteer to drive that.
Yeah. No, I think this is overdue, and it's been pointed out several different times talking about it, and I'm hoping that we get several volunteers, and I don't know if it's proper to say or not, but I would sure weigh towards anyone that's willing to be part of a bar pilot program or to volunteer program, that if we were in a position to have paid positions, that they would maybe weigh a little bit heavier when that comes down the pipe.
So first off, I think we should hear from the staff as to what some of the requirements are for what they're looking for.
Well, in the first place, there's really is the two problems that we have is, it's not just related to the fireboat. There's really, anytime that we're moving passengers and because we get tours of boats and things, if you have more than 6 people, you know, you need to have trained people. I mean,
They have to have a license, don't they?
You're supposed to have a license, in my opinion, and it's tough to get a 6-pack license and to have that kind of qualifications. We used to have Tim. When Tim was here, he basically filled that niche because he had all of the requirements that we needed. And then when you go, so number one is when you're hauling passengers. With the fireboat, if we're just going back and forth between, you know, the field siding boatyard and here or someplace else, you know, our crews are getting the training in order to drive the fireboat. And so it's not the ability to drive the fireboat. It really is, there's different qualifications when you're carrying more than 6 passengers. Then the second criteria is if you're in a fire situation, not only do you have to drive the boat, but you have to use all the pumps and all the other apparatuses and all the other things that are on there. It's a different situation. And we need additional training and people that are skilled in order to do those kinds of things and are willing to do. The last fire that we had, and we used the fireboat on, Alan and I went out, and we got called out at 11 o'clock at night. It was on the dock in South Bay, and it was foggy as all get out, and we're running on instruments. Literally, we're running on instruments in the fog, trying to get to the fire with the fire crews. You've got to be able to go in all kinds of situations, and you have to be trained. And there's a number of people in the Bay that have these licenses that have come forward and saying, look, we would like to be considered as part of this type of a program. And so what we want to do is to get our staff trained, but it takes a long time to get the license in order to do these things. And in the meantime, we can't wait a year or 2 years because there could be an emergency tomorrow. And so as I had mentioned before, we have 3 trainings with Humboldt Bay Fire this upcoming year. And we need that fireboat. It's a great asset for the community. We want to get our staff trained, but in the meantime, we just don't have the licensed and qualified people for those unique situations of driving more than 6 passengers and during emergency fire situations.
So we have a motion and a second.
I have a
Please.
question. And I noticed there's a fireboat fee in the fee services. So is this like a paid volunteer? So not a staff person, but if they go out on a fire and there's a fireboat fee, will they then be compensated for their time?
Typically, the fees, as an example, that we were going to, we're going to use the fireboat for the clean out the ocean outfall. We were going to have our pilot, and the city of Eureka was going to contract to use the fireboat for us to clean their outfall. Then we would have charged them this $800 a day fee to use that for other services besides just fire. And that if there was a declared emergency situation, we could get reimbursed by FEMA or other things for those reimbursement rates if you have those.
But we don't charge for fires.
We don't charge for fires. We don't charge for fires.
I guess I'm just wondering then, with these volunteers, it'd be great to be able to compensate the volunteers if we're not using our staff. If there's a fee being charged, are the volunteers going to be compensated or volunteering?
At this point, they would be volunteering their times.
Okay.
It's a volunteer position.
Yep, they're willing to do it.
Any members of the audience care to comment on this subject? Please.
Scott Fuller, Humboldt Bay Harbor District, number 3 maintenance, Samoa Peninsula, pretty much. I do a lot of maintenance I've done a lot of maintenance on the fireboat. Came to the union's attention last year that they were going to have to need somebody like this. We brought it to their attention that, there'd be guys willing to take the course and take the training and do it. But the fact is, we're so understaffed right now that we can't literally get away to get on the boat to drive it. Like, there's not enough of us to make this happen. And it's not our fault. And we want to staff this boat. And we have no problem going to take the course down south. I mean, I've already looked into it a little bit. And some of it's online, but really, mostly, you need the hours on the boat. And since I've been here almost 2 years now, I've had like 45 minutes of drive time, That's it, So we don't really utilize these vehicles, or these boats. We don't utilize them as we should. And I would like to see if we can get some more staffing so we can get people like me away from doing the day-to-day stuff that just is taking up all of this time that I can't get away from the training on the vessel. And the union would really like to play a part in this and be your pilot for your bar, or be your captain is what we want to do. But we just need to figure out a way to make it happen, that we can get a way to make this all work out. So I just wanted to put it out there that we are willing to do it and we want to do it, and we're just kind of been waiting, and then we saw this, so I had to come in tonight to voice it and just tell you guys that, once again, we really want to play a part in this. And we just like not be overlooked, Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate your ambition.
So I have a question, Larry. So what would be the solution there? Because I do think our staff is the first choice. Those are the folks they work for us. We can call them up any time of the day and night. We can schedule them. We can count on them because they are our staff. Is there a way to make that happen? Can we look into that?
What I put together is I put a table together, and I worked with other staff to do this, is with each of the boats that we have, the Port of Fire boat, the Port Authority boat, the Barfly, the dredge. In other words, what are the qualifications for each one of the vessels that we have? And then what is the criteria that we have for each one of those? And then the idea being that we would issue a license or to say, okay, you need the authority of you're authorized to do this.
I'm talking more about getting them trained and getting them getting the time. The only person I would say out of your staff that shouldn't drive anything is Mr. Wagshall. But everybody else is probably fairly capable.
Yeah, I'm just saying, is the first step is really is to set the criteria of how many hours do you have to have
Right.
before you can meet that. And so you put that together with this table, and then and then the second thing is, because right now, who is the one that's going to sign off that they've met the requirements, right? Right now, at our staff, we don't have anybody that has the expertise in that area. And so that's part of what I want to look to this volunteer fire captain, that they can help us to kind of do some of this evaluations for us, because we have this, tremendous amount of on-the-water experiences and the license.
Well, the other thing, Scott, I will say too is a lot of these volunteers are volunteering their time to learn, and there may be some of that needed from staff time too, but I'm not sure. Well, we'll talk about it. Mr. Zerlin.
Is it okay if I talk, sir? Okay. The fireboat is critical. I mean, the fireboat is critical not only for, well, we all know what it's critical for, but even at my yard with fireboat protection, my insurance is considerably less. The people that live on Indian Island basically are completely screwed without a fireboat. And we all know what happens when we have a situation when we couldn't get the fireboat. I mean, you got involved and I ended up getting involved. So we got to have a fireboat. And that's when I first met with Larry and said, we're willing to work. We're willing to do this. I have 8 licenses, all 100-ton masters or more. 4 of them are commercial towing endorsements that I talked to today that are willing to be volunteer firemen for the Harbor District. And we can, and I'm sure, Sebastian, you're licensed.
Yeah, just in the bay for like.
Well, we're not going to Trinidad.
Right, fine.
So, Leroy, what about training?
Alan, whoever's going to have to train us. But the way that I also...
What about training other staff? Well, Alan would
I'm more than... I was already talked to Brittany about working with Corey. I mean, I'm not boasting, but I'm a pro at Coast Guard inspections and licensing. I mean, over the last 50 years.
I would hope so.
I've got half the... I don't know how many kids I've got licenses. I helped Sebastian get his license.
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to work with you.
That doesn't help your case. Just
because the more licenses we get,
yes,
the better off I am too. Because then I have somebody. I mean, getting a license on the Madigan is a nightmare.
And the more licenses we have in our staff, the better off.
The better off. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. It's expensive and it's a pain. It's hard. I mean, it's hard only because getting 45 hours a day of or 40. That's what you have. I mean, if that's not logged, every person that works on one of your boats starting tomorrow should have a bound log that you can't take the pages out and their time is written down. Every time they go on that boat, when they're not going for a boat ride, you can't go on the Harbor Cruise Boat Madigan and write that down as your time and ride it for 370 days. But when you're on board and you're a certified deckhead, keep track of that time, because that's the hardest part. I mean, it's 368-hour days, now audited days.
Either of the 4 counts in the day.
It depends. It all depends if you're standing shift or not.
Okay.
If it's 4 hours on, 4 hours off, 4 hours on, you used to be able to get away with it, but they're not doing that anymore either.
Can we put this to a committee or somebody to work on this?
Whatever you want to do.
Well, actually, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and so we can go forward and solicit volunteers and work on these of their crafts.
Yes.
Yeah, we're there.
Motion second. Are you done?
I'm done, yeah. Going home now.
Any other comments? Anybody else like to speak? Seeing none, let's bring it back to the board. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Any administrative or emergency permits? None, it says here. So I will adjourn us at 9:46.